Hello, everybody.
Where am I? Who am I? Who is that guy, David? You're old
It's
enough
not
to remember.
Thursday. It's not Thursday. What are you doing here?
It's not. Well, listen, just totally mucking things up. I'm here to just ruin everything. I'm here to distract. I'm here to titillate and exhilarate and distract from people who
Titillate?
actually know. Well, David, it's after hours.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
We have
Okay.
creative license. Once we get
Titillate
past
with Nipplegate. Okay. Yeah.
9
There
p.m.
we go.
Eastern, the rules don't apply. The FCC, they go a little night. So
They're
yes.
asleep.
Well, your screen and what you're seeing is not deceiving you. I know I'm over at the Hall of Fame that is known as Safe and Sound Texas Audio Excursion, but a concert buddy at the ones and twos for this show. I might pop in here and there in the future, but wanted to walk through briefly what you're about to experience, or at least what the idea of what you're about to experience is. We'll see what happens, right? It starts as a great plan and goes down in flames. But the long and the short of it is, I know both of these guys. I know both of these guys love music. I know both of these guys are always talking about how to get optimal performance out of their experience, their listening experience, which is something I'm envious of, because I just like my old stuff. I like some of my new stuff, and I'm okay with that. But I'm curious. And I know that anytime you're talking about gear, it can get expensive, it can get confusing, and it's not always about the gear. And so, I guess, I don't know, a couple months ago, I'm sitting in a concert buddy lair, and I'm pontificating. I'm sitting on a throne of skulls of all my enemies, and it dawned on me, like King Conan. It dawned on me. I'd like to work with Louie, Vinyl Latte, Louie V here, and I already work with Bianco on surface noise, and these guys have a similar passion for what I'm talking about. So, like, why don't I just put like Hogan and Savage? Why don't I put the Mega Powers together? I'm far from Miss Elizabeth. If you're a wrestling fan, you know the pun. But the long and the short of it is, got these guys together, we got talking, and the reality is, one thing we all share, despite my lack of carnal knowledge in this area, is we all want to listen to our favorite music in the best possible way. Now, that can mean a lot of different things. So in essence, we're chasing better sound. And so this show, it's not going to be every week. I don't know if we could even do it every week, frankly. That's a heavy lift. So it's starting out, originally, it's like anything else. We're like, let's just do it once a month. But we're going to probably do it like twice a month to kind of whet the appetite, seed out all the non-believers, and also make this a very communal thing. Because anything that I think is vinyl community focused, I think should be inclusive, educational, like we say on Surface Noise, inform, educate, and complain, I think is what we say. But long and short of it, this will be on David's channel from here on out, like this one is here. And you've got two great stewards of information and titillation, like I said earlier, to kind of just guide the conversation. And I think we'll probably ultimately have some guests and so forth, and maybe some rotating seats as this thing kind of evolves, building the plane as we fly it. But the long and short of it is, we're going to have fun. We're going to learn some stuff. David and Louie are going to take you places and conversations that I am not equipped to go. I'm just like in coach, and these guys are in first class when it comes to a lot of this information. But I think it'll be fun. I say the room is filling up, so that's nice, especially on a debut show. So this is good beans. But that's the long and the short of it. And like anything else I'm affiliated with, if you can't watch our beautiful faces in the flesh, Vinyl Community Podcasts, take it with you on the go, wherever you go.
Right.
And I think it'll translate well. So there's that. I think for our maiden voyage, our maiden excursion, David, can I say that? Is that copywritten? Can I say that?
No, we can do that.
So for the maiden voyage, the guys are just kind of going to share their walk about like what their current setups are and the thought process. Louie just moved not too long ago, and I'm sure, and I know David moved really not too long ago either, a year or so ago. Yeah. And I'm sure part of those moves, I don't want to steal any thunder, was where am I going to listen to my stuff and how? And so I'm sure they'll kind of walk through that there. And I'm just going to be Michael Jackson Thriller, eating the popcorn, maybe making some bad jokes. Like David and I are switching roles. David's going to be the driver, and I'm going to be making those bad jokes and those drops. So anyway, good to see some folks fill in the room. And that's my 10-cent introduction into chasing better sound. Welcome.
Thanks, Chance, for giving us a chance.
Oh, David.
Oh, look
David.
at that.
Oh, man.
So,
I like
Louie,
how trying to get on surface noise turned into you're not good enough for that, but instead we'll create a whole new show just for you. So
This is the audition process. See, we do this with everyone. We do a live stream, and then we got to see. It's like a JV to varsity, right? Like surface noise is like, and plus there's so many strays. David knows this. When you're on surface noise, the haters, like we don't want to give that to you just yet. We're going to bring it. We're going to do this the right way. Whereas I did it the wrong way on surface noise. But long and short of it, I think we've got I'm already seeing some familiar faces, some friendly, familiar faces in the gallery. So I think we're doing something right in week 1.
Yeah, good. Well, Louie, you're an East Coaster. I'm a Texas coaster, whatever that is. Good to catch up with you.
Yeah, it's a pleasure to be here. I think this is going to be a great ice-breaking first debut session to kind of get the know a little bit of us behind just our videos, more diving into our passion and how we got involved into this hobby and kind of where we're at and where we want to go. I think it's going to be really great. It's a pleasure to meet folks dialing in that are fans of David's channel and Chance's channel. See some new names and some familiar names. So always a pleasure to be here with you gentlemen.
Great. Yeah. So what we're going to do, one of the first things is kind of take a little journey down memory lane a bit of how we got into vinyl and how we got into equipment, how we got into DACs, whatever it is in our life. And then we're going to share with you the setups that we have. And beyond tonight's kind of introduction, we really want to get into the nuances of how sound really hits us and the things that affect it. And, really people understanding what they like in sound. I think that's really important because like I say in my reviews, there's not always a right and wrong. It's more, it sounds like this, it has this characteristic. Now you have to know what you like. Do you like a lot more bass? Do you like more treble? Do you like a lot of imaging? What do you really like? And I think we want to help people tweak that perspective through this thing we call chasing better sound, because it is a chase and everybody's chase is different for a lot of different reasons.
Yeah.
And sure, the dollars come into it, but you can get really good sound without busting the bank too. But there's some really good esoteric stuff out there as well, if that's where you can go. So great.
Well, and even a step further for a noob like me, even though technically, guys, I am the only one on the dais is branded a seasoned audiophile, available over at my own devices channel. Quick plug for Dave. That's Modoc Dave. But for me, like I want to draft information off these guys. Like David uses a lot of terms that like I've grown to know, but I think a lot of people who watch these things don't know. And I think that if you guys have heard me say this before, if you go to the Hoffman forums, it's the Wild West. And usually a qualifier over there is in the signatures. This is what I'm listening to. And so like, obviously I think it's important to share your credentials, so to speak, but at the same time, like be open about sharing the information and a glossary of terms as mundane as that sounds. Like, I think it's important because I think people will find these little nuggets and content that we're putting out there and learn. And really, I think that's the true sense of the community is to inform and help make better choices, learn new things. Like these guys will probably share. There's probably a lot of trial and error involved in how they set their rooms up and equipment they bought and the treatments they've used in their rooms in different locations and homes and all that kind of stuff. And so that's why, like, to me, selfishly, this is great because it's like I can sit back and learn from these guys and learn through the chat because I'm hoping that it'll be interactive, a lot of back and forth and information sharing, which to me is like the best part, one of the best parts of doing vinyl community AirTag stuff.
Yeah, exactly. So, Louie, I guess I'm I'm gonna start because my story's probably longer. No, my age is longer, but
Hang on, David. David, we got to read this comment. This is
okay.
Louie's friend, Graybeard Nation, who I think they've collaborated with before. Todd says, "You guys are holding me up from a good drunk, so this better move along quickly tonight." So listen, the bar has been set low bar. So let's cross it, and let's cross it with expedience, because he's getting his drink on a Wednesday.
I think Todd wants to go to a bar. I don't know if
they're not going to show YouTube vinyl community videos at a bar. I find this hard to believe.
Change the sports channel, man. I'm sure you can find it.
Yeah. This is right before March Madness. This timing is not coincidental. Like March Madness this weekend. Chasing better sound now, right before, unless you want like the conference tournaments. Nah, nobody watches that. Come on, man.
Talk about better sound. There's nothing crazier than going to a bar and the TV's on. You can't hear it and they don't have closed caption on. I hate that.
New segment. Things I hate. I like it. That's good.
Yeah, exactly. Very much so.
Well, yeah, David. So talk to us about like where does your journey begin? Because you have a few more feathers in your cap in terms of the calendar than us. So.
Yeah.
Has this always been a lifelong pursuit for you? And then how has it evolved over the years? And how has it evolved with the advent of joining the vinyl community?
So I started collecting records when I was basically 6 years old in 63, almost 7 years old. And I listened to a lot of radio. We had a big WLS 89, the big 89 in Chicago, AM station blasting 50,000 watts. So I listened to a lot of top 40 music and started buying records. I think my first single was a Ricky Nelson single. So I just had a carrying turntable, that played 45s. I don't even know if it played 33s because I didn't buy them.
Was it a Fisher Price? Be honest. Was it?
No, it wasn't. Wasn't a Fisher Price. Yeah. It was a GE, I think, actually.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Sears and Roebuck fans, cover your ears, please.
Yeah, really. Well, it came with a cooling fan and the whole bit. But anyway, no. So I collected a lot of 45s at first because that was kind of the top 40. You were listening to that. And as I, matured into, as I was in school, albums started to become popular. So I started to buy albums. But there was a guy that lived next door, and he was a younger guy at the time, a young couple. They had like one kid, and he was really into high-tech gear. And he would build stuff in his basement. Heath kits, Dynaco kits, Radio Shack kits. And so I really got jazzed up with that, learning that from him. And you could buy those, and, they were probably 60% of the price of a built one. So you could get it a lot cheaper. So I learned a lot about electronics, and, he had Advent speakers, which were really top notch at the time, and dual turntables and a Gerard. And so I got a dual and started to get into a turntable versus a record player, right? Back in the day, it used to be a record player. The records would drop on each other, and today that sounds like suicide, but so I really got into classic rock and whatever was popular, on the radio at the time, because radio was a big feeder, and it, went from mono to stereo, and then to FM was stereo, and and I bought more and more equipment, more expensive equipment, more isolated equipment, preamps and amps, and higher end equipment. So I did that kind of all of my years in high school, college. And I really grew into being a bit addicted to records. And I would buy these records when they'd first come out. And I just did a video on a comparison related to Peter Frampton Comes Alive, because the vinyl file came out. And I'm looking at it, and it's still got the sticker on it I put on it in 76 that says Soundguard. And that was stuff that you put on a record that basically preserved, the wear. It avoided the needle from wearing the record. And these things sound as good as they did day one. And I know I played the hell out of it because it's got the covers totally got ring wear on it, from pulling it in and out. So, uh, so it just reminded me, of all these things I was doing. And so I really wanted my goal in life was to be a disc jockey. I hung around a radio station. I grew up in Gary, Indiana, and home of the Jackson 5.
Right.
I saw Michael and the boys in '68 when they were nobody, playing in the back of a Sears and Roebuck lot.
I knew we'd circle back to Sears and Roebuck. Look at that.
It always does. It always does. So yeah, I used to hang out at the radio station, and some of the guys would let me in there, which would piss management off, which was funny. But what's this kid doing in here? So one of my stories I have is that I was in '68. In May of '68, Bobby Kennedy came to Gary.
Okay.
And there was this hall right next to the radio station called the Croatian Center. And I was there early. I got up front, and the guy from the news at the next door radio station was standing right next to me, holding up a microphone and recording it. And so when he's done, everybody starts leaving, and the guy pushes me, and he pushes me to where I've got to go where he's going. And they're taking Kennedy into the back of the radio station to interview him. So I'm standing there in the damn studio at WLTH in Gary with Bobby Kennedy, and I got a signed photo of him, actually. And then, of course, a month later, he was assassinated. And it was like, man, it just really, one of those impressionable things. But, my love of music is kind of what, tied me in there, to that particular thing. And so I did, when I went to college, I did do radio, got on the radio station there, and did a couple of years at a station in Chicago, actually, that was like an oldie station. But it's tough to live on a disc jockey salary, that's for sure. So I had to get into the real world and do other things. But I kept my records that whole time, kept buying better and better equipment, got into CDs when they came out early. Early adopter and that kind of thing. So, and then of course,
along that way, David, let me ask you a question. Along that way, like, how did you learn? Like, was it just like, because you're talking about buying equipment and upgrading over the years?
I would go to the hi-fi shops and befriend the guys who work there, and just get to know them and go into the different rooms they had.
Sure.
They would let me try out equipment at home occasionally, so, it really was. And then MoFi, in the late '70s, I started buying everything MoFi came out with. I mean, I got from the original MoFis, the train ones from '77 when they first came out. So, I was big into any kind of audiophile records, Nautilus, CBS half speed. I would buy any and everything of that I could find at the time. And it's funny to look at the price stickers now, of course, but
right.
Yeah. So, so I really just stayed always close to it. Never gave up on vinyl when CDs came out, never did. I got into quad in the '72, '73, big time. I still have my setup. You'll see I have quad still. There you go. Novice Nick. Yeah. I got into quad big time. And unfortunately, it only lasted like 2.5 years because of competing formats. But,
HD DVD, we pour one out for HD DVD as it lost the battle to Blu-ray. So there's always, or Betamax. Remember, David?
Betamax and VHS, yeah.
That's right. Yeah. There's always usually a decisive winner. So
format wars, they call it, right?
That's right. So it extends everywhere.
Yeah. Whoever has the better marketing, it's not usually the better tech, but that's a conversation for another show.
No, you're right. Sony had the better tech.
And then buy them out of bankruptcy and take the IP, and anyway. So
that's what happens. So, questions for David. Did you buy direct-to-disc LPs? Yes, I did. Yeah, I have quite a few of those, and they sound fabulous. I also have DBX LPs that they're cut with the compression, and then when you play it through the DBX, it expands it. And it really makes a huge difference because that cut is so easy because it's a very compressed, cut in the lacquer. So I kind of went, every which way I could. I think the only thing I really didn't get into was 8 tracks. I hated 8 tracks because they cut songs in half and they didn't sound that good. Now cassettes, I loved cassettes. I had a Nakamichi in my car. I had a $1,200 Nakamichi in my car. And that was like in 82, 83. And a drawer would pop out on this thing and you put the cassette in it and you'd close the drawer because all the electronics were in another unit. And that thing could rewind a 90-minute tape in 30 seconds. You'd hear this flywheel. It would sound like an engine.
Sure.
And as it got toward the end, it could feel the tension difference and it would decrease the speed.
Yeah, yeah.
And it had a head on it that read the tape and it moved and then it locked in like the Dragon.
Wow.
Which Louie will probably talk about the Dragon, right?
Louie, do you remember 8-tracks at all? Do you?
So I was fortunate enough where I'm an early 80s baby. And I was fortunate enough to see all the formats because even in my dad's pickup truck, he had the 8-track player, right?
Right. Same,
yes. And I always found it fascinating that if you listen close enough, you can actually hear the music on the other side of the 8-track, right? So it's like bleeds through. But yeah, I remember that format. I had somebody tell me that 8-tracks are coming back. I don't think they will. I hope they don't. Let's not bring that back. Let's not do that.
Funny story. My neighbor, who's an elderly gentleman, and I didn't know this, but it was like I didn't really talk to him when we first moved to this house. Turns out when I did start talking to him, he is a fervent 8-track collector. Like once I told him I collected records, guy, like his whole body changed, and he's like, wow, and he's like, I love 8-tracks, and so every time I see him, he's wanting to talk about 8-tracks, and like it's kind of like when Dave was telling the story. I wanted to point that out. If you're not watching this, if you're only listening or you're in the room, David, like literally, I wouldn't say glowing because that sounds a little hyperbaric, but David's really smiling, like reminiscing, and this is like the passion that comes through when he's talking about the subject matter. And so you can kind of see when somebody's really engaged in the subject matter, if it's whatever it is, right? You can tell it's authentic, and that's again, it speaks to why I thought David and Louie would be great.
Yeah,
but,
the tape just plays in your head, I mean,
sure.
There was when I was on radio in college, I remember there was a song on Jefferson Starship Octopus, and it was an instrumental, and I was playing it just before the news was going to cut over, and it was called Fast Buck Freddy. And unfortunately, I said it too fast, and I said Fast F Betty.
So that's how your career in radio ended, David. You never told me this.
The phone was ringing pretty quick. Well, that was as bad as that was as bad as me saying Dolly Parton's greatest hits. Anyway, I said hits. I swear to you, I said hits.
Family show.
Yes. Again, the 9 o'clock hour. So before we get to Louie kind of walking us through a similar journey from the beginning, David, I do want to touch back on this. So since you've been on YouTube, since you've been your day job winding down, as we've talked about, you have a little bit more time to focus on YouTube and sound, chasing better sound. Again, you're going to hear it a lot tonight. What has this forum, this environment, this vinyl community added or detracted to your pursuit of chasing better sound?
Well, it's given me a lot broader perspective because of different networking that you're able to do.
Sure.
It's reinforced one of the biggest beliefs I've had for many, many years. And I learned that honestly through this guy that was my mentor, and that, there's really only 2 transducers in your system that really make the most sound difference. And that is a cartridge and a speaker. Those 2 can have the most in the vinyl world. That can have the most effect on sound. Amps won't be as different. Cables won't be as different. Now they'll be different and they can help. But if you want magnitude of change, a bigger magnitude, it takes those. So it's reinforced that. And also just really getting to know people that have the same passion. That has been the biggest benefit of the whole thing.
So speaking of, that's a great segue, Dave. We didn't practice this, but that's a great segue because, again, part of the reason I put this dynamic duo together was that same passion. And as Louie's content started getting on my radar, like it was evident. Like not only are we like similar in age, so we have like some similar like musical tastes and watch some of his videos and learn that, but the guy has a passion for the sound. At first I thought I was a gear guy, right? But like I've seen some of his content, and I'm sure we'll talk about it. But like it's not just the gear. The gear is definitely instrumental in it, pun intended. But it's also, it's like the way the room configuration. It's the dimensions of the room. It's how you treat the room. It's different, and we'll get into it. It's much more. And so then, like, even when I was setting up my little office here for the podcast and surface noise, soundproofing, like those little things that I wouldn't have thought about. You know what I mean? Like all those little things add up. It's like you don't build a house with just one piece of wood, right? You got to like take little pieces, and you also got to do some trial and error, which I think through this series, like I'm sure you guys will share that too. But Louie, kind of similar to David, like where does it start for you? And like, is it as simple as mom had a record and you listen to it all the time, and then you're off to the races, or how does that begin?
Yeah, I'm happy to give you the origin story. Before we do, I just want to take a moment and just call out that, hey, we got a debut show. We've already made money. Thank you, ADMV91, for coughing up the $2.99 super stickers.
Oh, super.
Appreciate that.
Yes, thank you.
Making it rain. Now we can retire early, so really appreciate that. I think this was our last show. Got paid, right?
That's what you got to do at the casino. Quit while you're ahead. And then,
while we're ahead, man.
Right.
Let's get out.
Yeah. Awesome.
So as I mentioned, it was in early 80s, baby. And, the primary medium in the house, besides when I was in my dad's truck that we talked about earlier, was records. So I grew up with records. I remember even going down. So, getting a little personal, I guess, but I'm sure maybe this is a story that will resonate with some. But like even McDonald's, when you got the Happy Meal, would sometimes give you that little record that you could go home and spin. It'll tell you like a little story, and it's kind of like a nice little surprise. And I used to get super excited when a new one of those would come out, and I begged the heck out of my parents when I go to McDonald's to get the new record to hear the new message, right? Which is basically just eat more McDonald's, but I was really into that at the time. So I kind of grew up with records, but when I started to build my own stuff, cassette tapes really started to take in. So I kind of put the records to the side, and then eventually the whole family started to buy cassettes. So we kind of transitioned into the cassette era, which seemed to be a little bit short-lived in my lifespan, because after I started to get a mound of cassettes, hey man, CDs. Wow, look at this, CDs became a huge thing. And I started just invest heavily in CDs. And at that time, any records that I had that I kind of acquired for doing house chores or were gifted to me, or cassettes that I bought and acquired over time, I traded them all in. I got rid of my entire collection to invest in more and more CDs. And I was literally doing odd jobs and working weekends to build out a CD collection. At the time of being a late teenager, I probably had close to 1,000 CDs. I got myself a computer. I started to rip all of them to the computer, and I started to do some DJing. I don't know if any of you guys remember back in the day when internet radio was a thing, but Shoutcast Radio was a huge thing. I used to have a segment on Shoutcast Radio. So I used a lot of the music that I acquired, probably broke some FCC rules there or whatever. Sorry for all the artists that you didn't get paid for me streaming your
Pirate
stuff.
Radio, Louie. Pirate Radio, yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's what Shoutcast kind of was. It was the internet pirate radio. So got into that, and then I kind of transitioned into everything being digital. So at one point, I have a car now. I have additional responsibilities. Need cash, man. Well, what do I have that I can get cash? Whole bunch of CDs. I got rid of them all. So I cleared my collection of records. I cleared my collection of cassettes, and I cleared my collection of CDs. And I went the my own music route for the longest time. And then I started getting into streaming when streaming started to sound okay. We started getting lossless formats and things of that nature. And then I realized that there was a lot of things missing out of music. I was getting frustrated with the experience. Albums that I would bookmark or save, all of a sudden, now they're remastered. Or now there's tracks that I really like and they're grayed out and I can't click on them anymore. Right. Yeah. And that was a very frustrating experience. And I went to a friend's house. He invited me over for dinner, and he's a little bit older gentleman, and he's from France, and he brought a lot of his stuff from France over to the States. And he, of course, had a nice record collection, because a lot of folks in Europe never gave up on vinyl either. And we sat down and had dinner with him, and I kind of was like, oh man, this is so cool. I remember touching the media, and like brought me back to childhood nostalgia. But what I left that day thinking, man, I really need to get back into this. But I didn't. I ended up getting involved with like car audio. So I was doing car audio competitions and got into that way of sound for a while. And then fast forward a few years, getting into a little bit an older, more responsibility, owning a house, etc. Met my wife. We go on vacation, and one of the places we're staying actually has a record player in the room. Sure. And you can go and rent records. And I remember that was like the highlight, one of the highlights of the trip. I was like, I just kept wanting to go down and get more and more records. And my wife turned to me at the end of the trip. She's like, you just need to buy a turntable. So I've accumulated some records over the time, but never had a turntable, and finally went out and bought one, man. And then I was hooked. I was hooked on the format. I remembered having something tangible that doesn't change, the exploring of different pressings to get different sounds. And I don't know, it just got bit by the bug all over again. And fast forward now, all this time, like I'm still hooked, you know. I get excited walking to a record store. I get excited to discover new music. I love when people send me new things to listen to. So yeah, I mean, that's from a bird's eye view. That's the origin story, you know.
Well, what do you think was like the greatest, like, let's say, closing the gap, right? Like, because you talk about, you know, like internet, and obviously you're internet savvy, for lack of a better word, but like, where did you find the most growth in your knowledge base as you kind of started getting back into vinyl and that sort of thing?
In vinyl specifically, it's surrounding yourself in your local community, record stores, picking up books about records. I still read physical books. That was one format that I never retired. We have a nice little library of books in our house. Hey, we just got another $4.99.
Novice Nick is just he's putting food on the table, literally. Right.
Now the new bar is $4.99. If anybody wants to go higher, please do.
You hadn't even told him what kind of equipment you have. Once Louie shares this, then we're really gonna need some donations again.
But if I can really hit what I the answer to that question, Chance, is that where I think I got my biggest knowledge was for making mistakes, for doing things wrong, and then realizing afterwards I did it wrong, whether that was buying equipment, buying an upgrade, or buying a record. I got suckered a few times. I think I walked into a store and people took advantage of me, told me something was special when in reality it wasn't, and I overpaid for it. And then once you start learning about these things, that you can actually protect yourself by learning about runouts, pressings, looking things up, Discogs being a wealth of information for you. If you're making a big purchase, definitely do your research before you buy. Those sort of things, I learned by making mistakes. Just quite frankly, it was a very expensive, class, if you will.
So outside of making mistakes, and maybe this is for both of you guys, like what would you say is like the biggest qualifier now in terms of you like reading something, watching a video, somebody telling you whatever, and then as a qualifier of like, okay, maybe I'll try that. Is it like the barrier to entry is it like a cost consideration? Like, you know what I mean? Like talk about experimentation, right? Like it's like you go out to a restaurant, never been there before, but I like a burger and fry. About everybody's got burger and fry. But then the waitress or waiter says, oh, you really got to try X. So you don't know this person. Yeah. They work there. They already probably have kind of what you're talking about, Louie. They probably had a point of view. So you would think they're demonstrating authority and their knowledge, but how do you really know you can trust that, right? Like, so now that you guys have made some mistakes, you've been on these journeys in your own ways. David, I'll start with you. Like, how do you know like it's worth pulling on the thread of the sweater, to borrow that Weezer song, to know that it's worth investing your time and sometimes your energy into something new. Again, chasing better sound. We're gonna have a drinking game every time we use that. Pour it up.
Todd, are you listening?
That's for you. It's all about you, Todd. Yeah, bottoms up, buddy. So yeah, but David, how would you say like new information enters your periphery? Like how do how do you vet it? Right, I guess is the question.
How you vet it? Well, as I was saying earlier, you get to know people through this community that have really articulable skills in certain regions and areas.
Okay.
And what I would do is, like, let's say DAX. I mean, Novice Nick knows a lot about DAX and a lot about that piece of the equation. So if I see something that's tempting or something that's tintulating, I'll usually share it with people like that and get their feedback, of what they think of it. And, a lot of times they'll say, yeah, but, there's a but there.
Always.
And that really is helpful. And sometimes they'll say, well, I don't know. I hadn't seen that before. Let me look into it. So it's really kind of taking this journey together with people and not feeling like you're alone in it. And I think for me, that's where, because I'll make the investment if I have the confidence from the competent people.
Yeah, no, you hit the nail on the head. And again, the reason I asked that question, and Louie, I'd love your answer in a second, is it's just what the spirit of this production I'm hoping is, right, is that finding like a source you can trust, because like David said, like the community aspect, not vinyl community per se, but just the communal part of finding a way to get information, trustworthy information is like so important if you're collecting records, you're buying gear, you're whatever, right? And so like I think a lot of people like me, like I'm fortunate, like David said, to have networked and got to know people who really know their stuff, and I lean on their knowledge base. But like people who don't have that in their area or in their social circle, they go out to the internet, right? And fortunately, there's YouTube, and that can be a wild, wild west. But like if they're going on the forum boards, like it's hard to disseminate like the real from the not real, right? And and Louie kind of hit that point about like, for lack of a better word, getting taken advantage of, like, like coming in and hoping somebody will like give good information when they're really just worrying about converting a sale. So Louie, same question to you. Like, how do you sift through all this information overload, especially now on the internet? How do you kind of like make heads or tails and know what to really lean into?
Yeah, so I want to address your question. I also want to give some recommendations too, right? So the first thing is, you mentioned you walk into a record store, you ask for recommendations. I will tell you that I have the opportunity due to my daytime job to travel a lot, and I always try to hit a record store when I'm on the road. And one of my favorite questions is asking a person behind the counter, what are they excited about? What is something that they would recommend? And as long as it's reasonable, say under $40 or so, I just buy it, because that's how I discover a lot of new music. And some of those finds have turned into records I really love, and I've started to collect other albums from that artist. And some of them were complete misses, right? But I didn't know until I tried. But when it comes to bigger things like buying hardware, making that big purchase, or investing into, a record or something like that is actually financially impactful, you got to have your circle of trust. You have to build it. You have to find friends that give you consistent, reliable advice. We have a little group chat on our text where every time somebody's looking for something and it's priced at a certain price at a fair or whatever, we send pictures and text each other, and the team goes to work on researching it if it's a good deal or not. Right? Because when you're at a record show, you can't always sit there and whip out Discogs every 5 minutes to do your deep research, right? But you get a circle of trust on friends, and you do the same with hardware. My biggest recommendation is build a relationship with your local hi-fi shop, like an actual relationship. Spend time with them, buy some stuff from them, show that you're committed, and over time you have a really reliable relationship. And if you say, and if you say, well, I don't really have a local hi-fi shop, a lot of these shops now, they ship across the country, and you can meet the folks at events like Expona or Capitol Audio Fest or any of the other ones that are around. You could tap into that. I want to just touch on one thing that David mentioned, though. He said, you have to listen sometimes for words when they say things like, well, but, or whatever. There's a great book that I think is really useful. I had to look it up real quick to get the name, but it's called The Complete Guide to High-End Audio. And the author is Robert Hartley. And he goes through everything from a beginner's kind of view all the way into advanced topic and hi-fi audio. But one of the things that he gets into also is how do you dissect reviews? How do you pick up the lingo in a review that what they're saying has maybe it doesn't sound or it's not what they're masking things, right? One of the things that he mentions, a lot of those reviews are products that are from sponsors in the magazines or sponsors on a website. And quite frankly, even on YouTube, sponsors of the YouTube channel, the thing was sent for free or whatever. So how do you dig through that to find the unbiased review of it all? So that just that chapter alone is really beneficial. You could buy the book. I think it's $30 or $40 at a Barnes and Noble, or I think the digital copy is like $5-6 or something like that. So I really recommend adding that to your library.
Yeah, I just put it in the notes there for everybody to see.
Nice.
Yeah, thank you.
Louie, we had a question for you.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, Robert
Acoustic
Mitchell.
panels, have they arrived?
There you go.
Have your acoustic panels arrived?
They have. You'll see them in some photos here upcoming.
Sure.
All but 2 have arrived, and I think they're coming this week. So I'm almost fully have the room treated, but we'll see.
You do a video on that once you're set up?
I'm going to do, every year I do a room tour. So I've been waiting to do this year's room tour until I have everything in place and the room measures correctly.
Okay.
Yeah, it goes without saying too. I probably didn't do this in the open, but obviously multi-streaming. This presentation in live form is taking place on David's channel, Safe and Sound Texas Audio Excursion, but also simulcast on Louie's channel, Vinyl Latte. So just know as a fundamental base, go to their YouTube channels and deep dive, because again, David's doing these shootouts that are very methodical and very like what I'll call very pointed. He's got criteria that I think is easy to follow and makes a lot of sense. And Louie is the same thing. You know what I mean? Like very, very intentional about the subject matter and what he's talking about. It could be a new receiver. It could be whatever gear. It could be the treatments, like the questions being asked here. So those are your probably, if you're curious, if you're watching this for the first time, deep dive that as well, because I think that as these shows continue to materialize, I think that that's a good reference point. And I'm sure, like they're talking about, I'm sure that there'll probably be tales of tribulations of learning, right? Like learn from their mistakes instead of repeating them yourself, that kind of thing.
Right.
So I think that David, I believe it's called the money shot. Is the money shot where we're going to talk about the gear, the current stuff that you guys use. And I think we've even got pictures for the folks watching. So it'll be very important to be very articulate about what we're talking about for the podcast audience. Wink, wink.
For the podcast audience.
Yes. Yeah, the podcast audience. Wink, wink. But yeah, let's spend the last 20 or so minutes here of the presentation, kind of walking through. Louie, I'll start with you this time since I gave David the open and the story, the back origin story. Why don't you? Look at this. Is this a PowerPoint presentation, guys?
Yes.
I think it's just some visual aids.
Unbelievable. Man. Where else in the VEE will you find a PowerPoint presentation? Like, if you can't empty your pockets, guys, for this, I don't know what you're waiting for. But anyway, I digress. All right, Louie, talk.
Remember, we're still looking for somebody to break the $4.99 barrier.
501, like the Levi's. 501. All right, walk us through it, bud.
Yeah, so Dave, you could just flip randomly through the photos. Yeah, see that?
Look at that.
Props, man.
Look at that.
That TV's broke. You got to get that TV picture fixed.
Yeah, So I'll just kind of walk you through my different chains. And for those that aren't familiar with the gear that I have, get yourself a cup of coffee. I'm going to try to go through it as quick as I can, but I also want to be detailed enough that for folks that really do care about the gear, that are audiophiles themselves or seasoned audiophiles, will maybe appreciate some of this stuff.
Yes.
So I'll start with my vinyl chain. I got pretty much like 4 different audio chains in my system. And the vinyl chain starts out with a hot rodded Riga P10 that's heavily modified. The feet are the Solid Air Dubstar 50, their isolation feet. I use a Stein Perfect Interface Carbon Signature mat. The RB3000 tone arm has been removed, and in its place is a SuperTrack Blackbird tone arm, and it's custom painted Riga white. And that's at the tip of that is a Lyra Kleos cartridge, which was calibrated by Wham Engineering and set up using Wally tools. And all of that is being accompanied by that little tower you see next to it. That's called a DS Audio Ion 001 ionizer. So if you could imagine you're a zero stack gun that works in real time as you play a record, that's essentially what that little unit does. The turntable connects to a Sutherland Dos Locos phono preamp. This is a transimpedance phono preamp. What's really cool about this unit is that it's two mono preamps put together. So you can actually just run one. So if you have a true mono setup, you could just use one of these. They have dual RCA in and dual RCA out. But of course, when you run it in stereo, you kind of run one channel to one side, one channel on the other side. Why I mention that is because that allows me essentially two inputs, but also gives me two outputs. So one of my output signals goes to the Tascam DA3000 SD. That's a field recorder. I use that to record my records to DSD. So I can take my rare records or things that are precious to me or lacquers and be able to archive them directly to DSD, which then I could play through the DAC.
We get to that one, Louie. Which one is it? This one?
Yeah,
that's the Tascam.
Yeah, that's the Tascam. Yep, that's correct. Sorry, my screen's a little small. That's the Tascam. So that's the field recorder, right? And then the other signal goes into, it starts out hitting the Sugar Cube Mini first. So if you're not familiar, that's a inline decrackle, denoiser, depopper for records. Really important for older records. If you collect older records and despite how much you clean them, you still have some surface noise, that will filter it out in real time without providing any sort of audio degradation. And then what's also very interesting about that particular unit is if you hit bypass, it directly bypasses any of the processing. So essentially you're connecting the input to the output, bypassing the unit completely. All of that then gets connected to the Vitus RI-101 amplifier. So that's the powerhouse, and we'll talk about what that's powering here.
That one right there?
You got a big silver box. That's correct. Yeah, that's the amp.
300 watts into 8 ohms.
Yeah. Well, it's enough power pretty much to power anything for the most part. Anything reasonable anyway. My second analog chain, this one's really brief. It's the Nakamichi Dragon cassette deck, which then goes right into the Vitus amp. The Nakamichi cassette deck, man, I got to tell you, is amazing. It's definitely one of the greatest cassette decks of all time. And I've been really getting back into collecting cassette tapes because I can't believe how well cassettes can actually sound. So if anybody out there is been hunting or looking for the Dragon, it's worth it. Find one, make sure it's in good condition, make sure it's been serviced recently. You'll love the heck out of it. I almost guarantee it.
Louie, I did a review of one.
We're an interactive program. Dr. Johnny Fever, the resident physician of the vinyl community, asks, or basically it's a statement, the Lord of the Dance, Michael Flatley, and his Irish dance troupe could perform in that room and the record will not skip. Would you confirm that is probably accurate?
That is probably accurate. There's a lot of attention to detail on isolation. I'll talk about real briefly what I got going on there in a moment. Yeah, but that's true. Good eye, whoever. Yeah. Good eye.
The doctor. He's licensed in the Bahamas. That's the only place he's licensed. Okay.
He knows He knows butcher blocks when he sees one.
He knows butcher blocks. Yeah. Think of Dexter is. Think of anyway. So please continue.
There you go. Yeah. So I'll kick it over to the digital end now. So the core of the digital is the Rune nucleus. I run that as the core. That streams up to the Lumen U2X, which is my network transport. The Lumen connects to the TNA DAC 200 via an AudioQuest Coffee USB cable. And then the DAC then connects directly into the amp. So that is my digital chain. I got to tell you that Lumen and TNA DAC 200 combo is fantastic. The Lumen does an amazing job converting PCM to DSD, and then when you have the one true bit by bit DSD playback with the DAC 200. It sounds as close as analog as I've ever heard a DAC sound, and that's coming from a guy who loves vinyl. So all of that is so when you think about records or when you think about your turntable, isolation matters, right? Vibrations matter. So you put treatment to kind of make sure that your turntable is isolated. In the DAC world, noise is your enemy, and that can come in through line. So to help keep the noise down, I use the Stack Audio Smoothland Regenerator that goes in between my router and network switch. I don't know if there's a photo of that, Dave. Sorry. So I use that in between my router and switch, which drastically helped improve the sound. And then recently, over the last few months, I added the Network Acoustics Eno 2 between the switch and the transport, and that further provided additional benefits, which I talk about in a recent review that I published on the channel. The kind of, I guess, the last signal chain for those that actually are care into this is my home audio chain. So I run the Anthem AVM 90 AV processor. That's their flagship processor from Anthem, which houses a bunch of different devices, and now it goes directly into the Vitus amp as well. So there's no amplification on the AV processor. It's just simply a processor for audio and video. So that amp connects to the speakers. The speakers are the KEF Reference 3 Metas. They're accompanied by the latest generation JL Fathom 12-inch sub. So they make that sub in, I think, 3 different sizes, which is like I think it's 11, 12, and a 13, and then they do a dual stack built in. But I went with the 12 to make sure it didn't overpower, which was still fast enough, but also, was going to fill up the room pretty well. Maybe one day I had a second sub, but that's conversation another day. The speakers are bi-wired, so I'm using the Audio Quest Robin Hood bass and zero speaker cables, and the sub uses the Husky cable. The entire vinyl playback chain uses the Nordos Fray 2 cables, and I also use the Nordos Fray 2 cables for the DAC on the XLR side. All of the interconnects outside of those 2 chains, anything else that requires an interconnect, whether it's RCA or XLR or AQ Waters, all the power on every device is also upgraded. So if you're talking about a physical power cable coming out of a component, if it's the analog side from the vinyl or the DAC, they're using Fray 2 cables. The sub's also using a Fray 2 cable. The amplifier's using a Fray 2 cable. Everything else is upgraded to the NRG4 by AudioQuest. And then if it's a DC power, it's the iFi silent power, whatever model I needed to be able to upgrade that. And the conditioners are the AudioQuest PowerQuest 707. I also have an IsoTech V5 Sigma. For accessories, is going into a Furman strip block. And then all of those go into, I have 3 different Cardis 4181 US duplex outlets on the wall. So that's the components. I got to say the last thing that kind of makes up the system is I do use a combination of Stack Audio isolation products under all of the components. So there are the various different OLVA CSAs, depending on what the weight requirements are. The speakers are running the OVA 100s. Both racks have OVA 100s under them as well. The sub has the OVA SWs under them. I just really love their product for the price point, design, aesthetics, and just performance. They seem to provide the biggest benefit for me when I've tested other isolation devices. The only thing I don't have running underneath that is the turntable block, which is the ISO Acoustics Delios. That actually has underneath of it 6 different ISO Acoustic Gaia isolators underneath that. So I'm using that for the turntable for now. I have some plans maybe to change that out maybe later this year, do some testing. So we'll have to see how that goes. The last thing I just want to mention was something that was touched on earlier, is that we often forget that one of the biggest components of our system is our room. We have to treat our room. That is where we are talking about sound pressures. We are talking about sound waves hitting devices in your room, hitting objects in your room, hitting walls, etc. That's how we hear sound. So you got to think about that when you're putting together your system. One of the biggest changes you can make is treating your room. So I use different types of absorption, um, um, bass traps, and diffusion panels by Gick Acoustics. So that's my preference because they look a little bit more like furniture and not just foam on a wall. It still doesn't really get the spousal approval. She'd rather not have anything behind the stereo equipment, but the acoustics you can definitely tell are night and day difference when you start actually treating a room. So yeah, so that's the system in a whole, guys. I'm sorry it took a few minutes to get through it, but
Get this guy a drink of water.
Go.
No, that's great. No, and I think that's good. And one, appreciate you sharing that. And two, this is the beauty of watching it back and playback. So people can stop, pause, take some notes if they want to, that sort of thing. So Louie, I appreciate it.
Yeah,
Bianco, do you also have a PowerPoint presentation, or how are we going to do this? Whoa, we've got dueling PowerPoint presentations. Unbelievable. You can tell those donos are money well spent, guys. I like it.
Well, I figured if I did mine after Louie, I was just going to say that the brand of everything I have is Fisher Price. At this point,
that's not true, David.
So I'm more of a vintage guy in more ways than one. Equipment, and you'll see that. So two different takes at the same objective, right? I think that's an interesting. We got $9.99. Wait a minute.
Listen, this is Brian from Fort Worth. This is the man himself, Boo Trader. Well done,
my man Brian.
Brian coming in clutch. He says, "Good grief, you pay and you get to type a shorter message, and if you type the free one, only 150 characters. Thanks for all that work, guys." So Brian, thank you. After hearing Louie's setup, we need more donos. I think it's evident that we need as much help as we can get on the path to being, wait for it, a seasoned audiophile.
Now let me share one quick little bit with you of something.
All right.
And I haven't heard Louie' system, so this is just an observation. And I have a few of my friends I've been with that have shared this observation. I have seen systems that cost oodles and oodles more than my system, which I didn't care for the sound of. So it isn't just the money, it's how you invest it and what you're looking for and in return. So just remember that. I just think it's important to put that perspective in there. So my system kind of looks like this from my listening chair. And so I've got a quad setup and a stereo setup, both, which is old school, of course, so you can tell where I came from. So I have the Polk RTA 11 speakers there, the narrow, taller ones that I have 4 of those, 2 in the front, 2 in the back behind me. And for my main listening, my stereo, I have the Polk RTA 12 speakers. And these speakers look like this behind the covers. The RTA 12s on the right, and they've got a pretty extensive tweeter and electronics behind it. And they have passive woofers in them, as does the RTA 11 on the left. That's just a design of the RTA, or real-time array is what that stands for. But ever since I started buying Polk speakers in the late 80s, I don't think I've heard others, but I haven't changed. I had different models, but the sound for them and what I like are just very in sync with each other. I've got 2 RT81 turntables with AT Audio-Technica 540 Microline or ML with a modified body, a metal body or aluminum cast body on it instead of the plastic. So I run 2 of these side by side, as you saw in the first picture. Sure. And that's how I do my shootouts, so that I can compare the 2 records in real time to each other, having them 5 to 10 seconds apart from each other, and then switching back and forth to hear the differences in them. For amplification, I have an NAD 3140 integrated amp, which can be made into a mono amp. I also have a 2140 amp only power amp that can do one side, and this does the other. Along with that, I have a DBX NX40. It's a noise eliminator for tape, and it also is a disc decoder for DBX records. I have about 15 records that were encoded with DBX. And on the right, I have the Cubicus RCA4X, which is a switch with a remote, and that's how I switch between the turntables from my listening chair. I also have, when I want to go old school, I will listen to my Sherwood S5500 S3 model. It's a tube integrated amp. And my phono stage for my turntable on that side is a Graham Slee Special Edition 2 phono stage amp. And that's what I use on one of my turntables. I'll show you the other, what I use. Below that Sherwood, I have my headphones are MDR 7506 Sony's. I have an Asus laptop that I do my conversion of vinyl to digital files there. And then I have a CD mixer and 2 CD thing if I want to just, when I go remote sometimes and do DJ work, I'll use something like that. But I don't use it in my system at all. On the digital side, on top, I have a Waxwing phono preamp, and it is what is being used for my other turntable. And this is, it's also able to do a conversion from analog to digital to put it to files or through a DAC. I'm using it for the analog phono stage on it, and it's very configurable through an app that communicates with it through Bluetooth. I did a review on that on my channel. My center channel is a Triad Bronze center channel for my 5.1, and my streamer DAC is a Blue OS Node. And then to fill out my 0.1 on the 5.1 side, I don't use a sub in my stereo mode, is the SVS 1000. Let's see, on the digital side, for players, I have 2 Oppos, a BDP 93 and a BDP 103. Y2, one's just a backup, essentially, against the other. Audio source amp 100, is the driver for the center channel. So I use that for the center channel only. And there's that other NAD 2140 power amp that does one of the channels with the 3140 when they're bi-amped or made a mono block out of, essentially. And then on the quad side, I have a Pioneer QX949 quad receiver that does all 3 of the ubiquitous formats, as well as an innovative Involve Audio Surround Master V2, which converts stereo to quad. So that's for taking stereo records and listening to them in quadraphonic. Very cool. And then I have a Pioneer DVL 700, which is a CD DVD Laserdisc player for my horde of Laserdisc movies that I have. There's some movies you can't get that only came out on Laserdisc, believe it or not. It's really weird. And the original Star Wars is on Laserdisc.
Oh, nice.
And then an older Sony. It's a really beautiful glass TV. It weighs about 40, 50 pounds. It's a really beautiful picture on this 40-inch 1080p LED TV. It was the first TV that had Google TV back in 2010. So that's what I watch things on in the room. And so there's your paltry system.
Oh, come on. I mean, you lost me at DAC. I've been trying to keep up ever since, David.
DAC Goose.
Yeah, that's great. No, hey, I think we had a question. Let me find it. I think it's from Dave. Let's see. I thought I started. Didn't I start? Let's find out. Oh, well, Dave, if you want to expand, he said, I have a question about quad versus stereo. So
please
expand on it. We're happy to. We're happy to take
any question you have. Someone made a comment. Surprisingly, SQ Records sound pretty good in regular stereo. Well, they were meant to. SQ and QS were meant to. CD4 was a little more difficult because it took a certain kind of stylus to really read all the information on it, and cartridge. So that one was an outlier, I guess I would say. But there was an album released a few years ago by a jazz artist and a singer that was in quad that got rave reviews, but it's not being done anymore, I'm sure.
Probably a pretty expensive process nowadays, right?
Well,
Or
everybody just goes 5.1 now, right? So it's everything's, everything's 5.1 or Atmos or whatever.
sure, formatted out.
Yeah, right. So the Blu-ray audio has kind of taken off as the de facto format for multi-channel.
Sure.
And there's a place in England called the SDE Shop that sells a lot of those and has unique releases that you might want to look at, that I get a lot of stuff through. They released like all the Tears for Fears stuff in 5.1 and Atmos. So,
cool. So Doodah Dave says, I've got 2 JBLs on top of 2 KLH, so I don't have traditional quad.
No, 2 would be behind you for traditional quad.
So as we rounding third, coming home, I had one more question for you guys before we put a bow on this debut episode. I know in some cities they have like listening centers, listening bars, maybe. Like I know there's some. I'm just curious if you guys have ever frequented those establishments, and what's been your overall take. Now, for perspective, sometimes it's just a place you can duck in, like a great hi-fi shop. That's not really, I mean, they're selling things, but it's more about the ambiance and the experience. Other places, literally, I believe it was one in Nebraska, if I'm not mistaken, you're a member and you have to have a membership to get in, and you can bring your own records, and they have just like posh nosh kind of stuff. So I'm just curious, Louie, I'll start with you. Have you ever been in one of those kind of arenas, and what was your impression?
Yeah, so we have one in downtown Orlando. It's called Alfie's Hi-Fi. And every night when they open, only music they play comes from records. So they have DJs come in and spin records. They have nights where I think you can also bring your own record. So kind of visitors music. They have a nice little bar. Everything inside of the place is retro. So they have like all this old equipment kind of mounted in a wall, etc. Gives these kind of very retro vibes. Service is great. Vibe is great. It's a good place to go hang out. And literally across the street is a record store called Retro Records. So
there you go.
You can go do some record shopping and also hit Alfie's at the same time. So I would definitely do that if you're ever in downtown Orlando.
Boom. What about you, David? Are you familiar with the concept of these kind of listening rooms for entertainment, if you will? Have you ever taken that?
Not rooms, but I mean, we've got a few coffee shops that have listening areas and sell records in the coffee shops as well. So I haven't seen any, but maybe I just don't hang around that part of town. I don't know. It's just,
All right. Well, let's close on 2 quick questions, and then we'll call it a night. Sure. Graybeards Nation, still here, still not drunk enough. Todd asks, tell us more about this crackle elimination device, Louie V.
Oh, Sugar Cube.
Does it detract from the sound?
No, it doesn't. You can, of course, in the Hoffman forums, there's, I think, 100 and some pages on this thing. Everyone has owned one will vouch that it doesn't impact the sound at all. What's very interesting is that while you're playing it in real time, you can hit the bypass button and the filter button, and you can try to hear the difference yourself. The only thing that you do get is maybe about a half a second latency, because it's doing some processing before it goes back out. So there's just a small little bit of latency that you'll get. But other than that, I mean, I've never been able really to tell the difference. I've left it on by mistake before and didn't even know, right? Until I went to go turn it on for an older record. I'm like, oh, it's already been on.
And what other thing is on there? You can hit a button and hear what it's getting rid of.
That's true too. Yes. So there is a click mode or monitor mode, I believe they call it. And you can just hear everything that it's removing, which is honestly how I do some of my tests. I see how noisy a record is by putting that on, putting it on monitor and listening to see how noisy it is.
Update. Todd has an update. He said he fell twice, now and can't get up. So mission accomplished. So
Perfect.
we did
We
it.
must
All
have
right.
said chasing better sound enough.
He can do one of those commercial now. I fell and I can't get up.
Yeah, medic alert bracelet, Todd. I think it's a great tie-in to
Yeah.
Graybirds Nation. Think about
Hey,
it.
there's some money. Make some money there.
All right, David, we'll close with this one. Brian, the king of donos today. Again, thank you for your contribution to the program proper. Boo Trader for scoring at home asked, David, where did you get that Cubelix 4x RCA switch? I've been trying to find what I need to hook up 2 Techniques turntables to a receiver. That is what I need to find. Do you have any?
Okay. Well, it's funny you said that, Brian. I know, Brian, we talked the other night, so I'll get in touch with you directly. On something you had earlier, Chance, I got with him.
Yep.
Yeah. But yeah, that was an item that I found ironically through Amazon. Now they carried it for like a month, and then the price shot way up on it, and I didn't see it anymore because I was going to buy a backup of it. But I'll get with you. I think I found one just like it, so I'll let you know, Brian.
Nice. Good stuff. Well, guys, I think we did pretty good. Maiden voyage.
Yeah.
No loss of limbs or loss of life, so that's always a success. Hopefully some homework. Maybe Louie gave a book recommendation. I put a link in the chats to Amazon, but that's what I did on the fly. So you don't have to shop Amazon if you don't want to. There's other stores, but at least it gives you frame of reference. But
Correct.
I think, as we said in the open, the next show is March 25th. And again,
Wednesday?
David and Louie V taking you guys on the journey of chasing better sound. I'll probably duck in sometimes because I actually enjoy this. But I'm also the noob. So like I have a Polaroid of my setup of my Marantz 6300 and my 2230, I just felt like it's like if you go to the urinal and you look over, I knew these guys would blow me away. So I just.
Do you have that Polaroid in with like all your kids' photos and stuff?
I do, and the big binder. Yeah, it's
my dog. This is my kid. This is my amplifier. Yeah, I get it.
That's right.
Yeah, my dad liked me so much he kept the pictures of the kids that came with the wallet. So it's like,
there you go. They're good stock photos. Just saying.
Yeah. All right. Well, guys, great run again. You can catch this on next show, 325, if you're scoring at home. Simulcast on both the Safe and Sound Texas Audio Excursion YouTube channel and Louie V over at Vinyl Latte, his YouTube channel. And then also, if you're in the car, if you're on a run, or if you're robbing a bank, Vinyl Community Podcasts, play us. We're at Apple, Spotify, anywhere you can find podcasts. You can find these guys sharing this juicy information after each show. All right.
Very
well,
good.
David, you're driving, so I think we're going to call that a wrap. And good stuff. Thanks, guys, and continue the chase to better sound.
Will do. Thanks, everybody, for joining. Take care.
Thanks, everyone.
See you.